Hi friends, today we're going to read chapter 39 of our book. Jack didn't even pause at the sight of the huntsman. Instead, he leapt forward, yanking his own sword from his back with both hands as he sprinted straight at the man blocking the entrance to the palace. The huntsman pulled out his own axe, ready for Jack to swing at him. Except Jack never swung. Midway through his run, Jack whipped his arms forward and threw his sword end over end right at the huntsman. The man's eyes went wide with surprise as he ducked under the sword, bringing his head down to the level of Jack's shoulder, just as Jack's momentum crushed the two together with a loud crack. Both dropped to the ground, Jack clutching his shoulder, in pain but smiling, the huntsman clutching his head in pain and moaning. The larger man shook it off quickly and jumped back to his feet with a fierce growl, only to have Philip slam the broadside of the huntsman's own axe right into the man's face. The blow threw the huntsman backward, knocking him to the ground again. He landed hard on his back, the air whooshing out of his lungs. Before the huntsman could even take a breath, a shadow covered his face. The huntsman blinked and looked up to find May standing over him, the point of Jack's sword at his throat. "We're ready to see my grandmother now," the princess said calmly. There was a pause, and Jack briefly wondered if it could be that easy. "No," the huntsman said, his eyes twinkling maliciously. "I'm sorry?" May responded incredulously, pushing the tip of Jack's sword into the man's throat until a dot of red blood appeared. The huntsman swallowed as the sword bit into him, its white glow lighting his face eerily. Yet again he refused. "She'll do it, you know," Jack told him. "Is this really worth your life?" "That's right," May said. "I'll do it." She nodded to Jack, who nodded back. "You've no idea what you're playing with," the huntsman said. "If she finds out you have his sword..." "We'll worry about that," May told the huntsman. "You worry about the fact that this thing's getting heavy." With that, she lifted up the sword so it hung about a foot over the man's neck. Then she dropped it. Jack could have sworn the huntsman's eyes popped right out of his head before May caught the sword an inch above his neck. "I could do this all day," the princess said with her half smile. The huntsman winced. "I'll take you to your grandmother, all right," he said. "Just let me up." May nodded, backing off a little to give the huntsman some room, and he swept his right leg up, kicking May's hand hard enough to send the sword flying from her grasp. A second later, he was back to his feet with a grin. "You kids are so gullible," the huntsman said, chuckling. He put a toe under the axe Philip had dropped, then kicked the weapon up and grabbed it in midair. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Jack sighed. "If only." "I'm glad you kids finally figured out where we had your dear old gran," the huntsman said, casually twirling his axe in front of him in a figure eight. "I thought you'd never get here." "Shows what you know," May shouted. "We didn't figure it out. The mirror told us." "Good one," Jack murmured to her. "I'm useless without my sarcasm," May said, shaking her head. The huntsman took a step forward. "So," he said happily, "who's first?" Jack and Philip both moved toward the giant of a man, but he kept them at bay by swinging his axe in a large arc, all the while keeping himself between May and the sword, which lay on the ground a few feet away. "Did you really think that you could take me down like that?" the huntsman asked incredulously. "It wasn't just so easy as to let you think, thereby trapping you in the palace without all the fuss we've had the last couple of times we've met." "Trapping?" Jack said, then spun around to look behind him just in time to see the twin tornado doors whirling closed. And now between them and the door appeared 7 small ugly creatures, the same ones who had attacked May in her home. Each one hefted a nasty-looking pickaxe, and each one looked ready to use it. They were trapped. "And to think," the huntsman said, "I spent all this time hunting you down, girlie, when I should have just waited here." "We might be trapped," May said, faking confidence, "but this isn't all of us." "Who else?" "Oh, you mean the wolf?" The huntsman laughed loudly. "After the last time, I'd be surprised if he was fool enough to face me again." "Count me a fool, then," said a wolf from behind them. Jack turned around again just as the wind doors exploded into thousands of little breezes. Filling the now empty doorway was Malevolent, still in dragon form, with the human wolf riding on her back, reins in hand. He quickly dropped the reins, then leapt down from her back, landing directly on 2 of the small monsters. Dwarfs, they looked like. Without even a pause, the wolf kicked those 2 hard enough to send them flying into the snow walls, where their helmets crashed into the snowstone with loud gongs. 2 others leapt for him, but the wolf jumped straight into the air, leaving the dwarfs to collide below him. He came down on top of the second pair of dwarfs, knocking both to the ground. He reached down slowly to pick up an axe in each hand, twirled them around for a moment, then launched both right at the huntsman. The huntsman knocked the pickaxes straight to the ground with his own axe. Are you challenging me? The huntsman asked disbelievingly. I hardly think it will be a challenge, the Wolf King said, an evil smile on his face. You caught me unaware the last time we met. Do you dare fight me face to face this time, coward? The huntsman returned the smile. I think we both know the answer to that, he said, as dwarf arms grabbed the wolf's cape from behind, yanking the animal off balance. You see, the huntsman continued, I would face you, Mantu, well, dog, but why take the chance when I can take you down underhandedly? As the wolf fell backwards, he pushed off with his feet to land hard on the dwarf behind him. The one remaining dwarf drove its axe toward the wolf's face, but the wolf kicked up, knocking the axe into the air, and the dwarf off balance. By the time the Wolf King caught the axe, he'd slammed the dwarf back against the snow wall, knocking it out. I believe it's time you took that chance, he said to the huntsman. The huntsman shrugged. I faced worse. The real question is, the wolf said, a large grin playing over his face, have you been distracted by worse? The huntsman frowned, then spun around, his axe at the ready. Unfortunately for him, Jack, May, and Philip were gone, the wooden door on the opposite side of the courtyard blowing wildly as it swung open. So the wolf just distracted the huntsman so the kids could get by. We'll have to see what happens and if they get Snow White in time. See you tomorrow.